Jeffrey Talanian's Hyperborea is a pulp fantasy setting and adventure RPG gaming system using the skeleton of first edition Advanced Dungeons & Dragons and heavily influenced by the works of Robert E. Howard, H.P. Lovecraft, and Clark Ashton Smith. A few months ago, the Kickstarter for the third edition of the game came to a close after raising $173,000. In December, the PDFs for this new edition were released to backers, of which I am one. But what makes this a third edition of the game? Stick around and find out right here on RPG Retro Reviews. Hello everyone, welcome to my channel RPG Retro Reviews. I'm Captain Courageous and I review old school modules and games and try to give them a fun and informative analysis. If you've ever colored in dice with crayon, if you've ever painted a miniature and struggled to keep the eyes just right, or if you've ever spent hours over a sheet of graph paper drawing a labyrinth of corridors and rooms to confound your friends with puzzles, tricks, and devious encounters, then this channel is for you. Welcome. This week I'm giving a brief overview of the third edition of the OSR game Hyperborea, formerly Astonishing Swordsmen and Sorcerers of Hyperborea. This old school style game recently released the PDFs after its successful Kickstarter campaign in October raised over $173,000 to bring this new edition to life. I've already done a full review on the second edition of the game, which you can find right here, and you should definitely check it out. But briefly, Hyperborea is an old school role-playing game using the framework of Dungeons & Dragons as set out by authors Arneson and Gygax. However, the author Jeffrey P. Talanian has greatly expanded and reworked a lot of the classes, spells, tactical options, and monsters to integrate seamlessly into his fantasy setting of Hyperborea, a fantasy setting based heavily on the pulp fiction works of H.P. Lovecraft, Robert E. Howard, and Clark Ashton Smith. Think Conan the Barbarian meets the Cthulhu mythos, and you've got a pretty good idea of what this setting is all about. For this overview, I'm going to be going over the primary changes to the system and differences between the second and third edition of the game. I'll be doing a full review of the game once the hardcover releases make their way to backers in April or May. Of course, the most notable change between the newer edition and the second edition is the dividing up of the rules from one massive 600-plus page tome into two books, the Player's Manual, which is 333 pages long, and the Referee's Manual, which is 317 pages long. This is a great change. The look and feel of the larger volume was great, but the thing was a lumbering beast to sit in your lap. I own several copies of the second edition Player's Manual, and I can attest that during play that book sees the most use. The reference sections in the main tome I use mostly before a game session to prepare, though occasionally I need to access the main book for monsters during play and the like, so having a smaller book for that purpose is a very welcome change. Of course, with two volumes comes new artwork, and the cover art for both the Player's and the Referee's book by artist Charles Lang are phenomenal and really capture the essence of what Hyperborea is all about. Of course, the cadre of creative talent Jeffrey Talanian has gathered together for this project is top-notch, and there is a ton of new artwork for this edition, as well as a few stylized presentations in the rules themselves, such as the artwork borders for the chapter headings. I love this kind of artwork in a rules book. Not only is it capturing the essence of the game in pictures, but also is kind of fun to look through and pick out the many references. In addition to all the cosmetic changes, there's also a bit of rebranding in that the game is now far less verbose and simply called Hyperborea rather than the mouthful astonishing tales of swordsmen and sorcerers of Hyperborea. which should help widen its appeal. As far as the game rules go, everything remains fully backwards compatible with previous editions, but with so many people playing the game now, certain minor revisions have been made to the character classes. More races have been added, and the most major change is to the sequence of play in combat, which has been greatly simplified, thus necessitating the 3rd edition. Some of the class changes made are as follows. The Cataphract, which is the Hyperborean version of the Cavalier, gains the Shield Sacrifice ability. This essentially allows the Cataphract to avoid damage from a melee attack by sacrificing their shield. The shield is destroyed from the attack, but damage is avoided. This ability is usable once per day. The Huntsman gains the Harvest Venom ability. This is a cool new ability to extract the venom sacs from snakes, spiders, and giant insects. It is successful on a 9 in 12 chance. However, it is dangerous. If a 12 is rolled, it indicates exposure to the poisonous fluid. For Paladins, there is the introduction of the Fell Paladin, which is a lawful evil version of the traditional lawful good Paladin. Fell Paladins are frequently, but not necessarily, Paladins who have fallen from grace. Their abilities are generally those of the regular Paladin with minor alterations, such as the Cure Disease ability only works on the Paladin himself, or it only works on good aligned as opposed to evil. Rangers gain the Scroll Reading ability and gain spells for high wisdom scores. For Witches, the Witch's Brew Decoction ability is greatly simplified. The biggest change is to the Monk, who gains upgraded fighting ability and vastly improved empty hand damage, as you can see from the chart comparison here. Also, the attack rate is now 2 attacks per round. In addition, the Monk's strength and dexterity now also gains a plus 8% chance of success when performing extraordinary feats of said type. The Assassin also gains the Harvest Venom ability, and the Bard's spells per day are slightly improved. Organizationally, all classes starting packs now appear at the end of their respective class descriptions. The game also adds 12 new playable character races. It's important to keep in mind that for the most part, player character race does not actually affect game statistics, but informs the player as to their background, culture, and role-playing opportunities. Here are the typical races found in Hyperborea, and here are the new races added, though they occur much less frequently than the common races. The Oon are an interesting race choice, which were a monster in the 2nd edition. They are sterile, created by the Migo, that have nearly transparent skin and are created in a lab and have no maternal connection. They are fed an addictive elixir throughout their lives that suppress sexual and hormonal development, ambition, and individuality. If they are denied that elixir for more than 2 weeks, they go mad from the withdrawals initially, but then begin to develop normally, however, will always remain sterile. Thus, freed and introduced to the world at large, they become kind of a blank canvas, very open to new experiences, which makes for a very entertaining and interesting role-playing opportunity. But of course, all the race backgrounds in Hyperborea are great for that, and is one of the endearing aspects of the game, in that the characters begin very much grounded to the setting. Another great change, and one that I think a lot of Hyperborea GMs had already adopted, was the ability for different sorcerer types to share like spells from lists. For example, if both sorcerers can cast invisibility, an illusionist could let a magician copy it from their spellbook. In addition, characters need not memorize a reversed version of their spell and can choose to reverse a spell that has that option at the time of casting. Also, let's dive into the changes to combat. In 2E, the combat realm was divided into 2 phases, with different actions, abilities, and movement broken up into 2 sections during the initiative queue. While many people liked or got this mechanic as it broke up the sequence, especially when characters and monsters have multiple attacks, it was sometimes a bit challenging during the heat of play to keep track of the timing of certain interactions. 3E dispenses with all of that in favor of a more traditional sequence while retaining all the fun tactical options that make Hyperborean combat so dynamic. Multiple attacks now happen all at once when the character or monster attacks during their turn in the sequence, and retain the reverse Holmes initiative style, in which a d6 is rolled to determine which side acts first, and then, in the case of ties, resolves in dex order, which is why all monsters in the Hyperborea game have a dex stat. However, there's still a lot of tactical options available to keep combat from becoming a routine slogfest. Reach weapons or long weapons can still get first strike regardless of initiative. Further, Hyperborea lists a very healthy number of advanced combat options, which will surely come into play with some frequency. For example, one that my group takes advantage of is the Ready Shooter option, which allows a character to knock an arrow, ready a crossbow or wand before combat begins, effectively allowing a free shot pre-initiative roll. If the other side is also so prepared, then things are resolved in dex order. As you can see here, the list of advanced options is pretty significant, and with a careful reading of this section, players will certainly find several things they will want to use. Parry and block, running dodge, reckless fighting are all great options, and as referees, certainly employing these tactics with your NPCs will likely keep combat surprising and interesting and encourage the players to try them as well. Gratefully, both the player's book and the referee's book now have comprehensive indexes. Those who have been long-time viewers of this channel know that I deduct 2 points off my reviews for any RPG without an index, so my score for Hyperborea's presentation, which was already pretty high, will improve. In addition, the Hyperborea bestiary has been expanded. Some are traditional advanced Dungeons & Dragons monsters, such as the Blink Dog. There are now a lot more stats for common animals, such as the hawk, hare, gull, and owl. Also added in is the Wereshark, which is clearly a homage to John Eric Holmes, author of the first revision of Dungeons & Dragons, known as Blue Box Basic. The Wereshark appeared in many of Holmes' works, including his novel Mazes of Peril, which I reviewed for this channel a few years ago, and of course were mentioned but not directly statted in the basic set. The Night Gaunt is greatly expanded to include younglings as well as a Night Gaunt Queen. There is the unique to Hyperborea monsters, the Haunting Man of Ash and Coal, and the Transtellarial, armored-sized changing giants from another world concerned with the state of the multiverse, as well as undead animal stats, clearly the foul results of experimentation by necromancers. One thing that I really liked about the previous edition was the magic item section, and this new referee's book has been expanded here. Like much of the rest of the game, having the setting meld with the rules really shines. There are so many setting-specific items that adventure ideas just leap off the page, such as the Atlantean shell armor. Neither metal nor bone, it is lighter and stronger than either and resembles mother of pearl. The secrets of its construction long lost to time. More Lovecraftian-style items, such as the Demon's Bane harness, functioning as a +2 plate mail armor. When fighting demons, it becomes +4. Further, if the warrior, who must be of lawful good alignment to even wear, strikes the final blow against a demon, that foul creature's soul is sucked into the armor itself, and the foul screeches and cries of all those trapped within can be heard. The armor is horrid to look at, with realistic demon visages, evil eyes, toothy maws, porcine snouts, and so on. If observed for a time, one might just perceive movement of said features. The magic section is just rife with these evocative and unique items, as well as quite a few legendary magic items, such as rings of elemental command and feather falling, shooting stars, and such, or a rod of lordly might. Of course, each of these must be carefully read, as some of them have interesting twists and changes to what you might be familiar with. Of course, it's Chapter 14, the Hyperborean Gazetteer, that is the star of the show in the referee's manual. The strange and dangerous world of Hyperborea is laid out for the referee, from the calendar to political divisions. Everything a GM needs to run their game is presented here, and once again provide a springboard for the imagination. Combine this with the new Atlas, and the world comes alive, and the many adventure possibilities seem to just leap off the page. Weather and survival against the elements is a major consideration when traversing over the vast landscape, as well as avoiding or surviving the encounters with the many dangerous denizens that roam the plains of this frigid world. Speaking of the Atlas, I'm looking forward to getting that book in hand, as well as the PDF looks great, as you can see here. The world map is divided into page-sized chunks, which is a great improvement for its utility. The massive poster map was nice, but it wasn't that easy to use in the middle of play. I had already taken to snapshotting sections of the digital version of the map and printing them out, but that supposes that I know ahead of time exactly where the players are going to go in a session. This allows the referee to plot PC travel on the fly in a lot more convenient manner. I'm not going to do a D20 review of this new edition just yet. I want to get the actual books in my hands before I do that, but I wanted to give you a little glimpse of what Hyperborea 3E is about and perhaps whet your appetite for further reviews for this outstanding game. I still have a review of the Midderlands OSR fantasy setting. I've also got a few things in the mail recently, as you can see here. Finally, I got the Return to Dark Tower game, and you can look forward to my thoughts on this game very soon. Also, I went ahead and purchased the new version of the HeroQuest game system. I did a review of that game in June of 2020, so I'll be giving my thoughts in comparison to the new game, including giving it a D20 rating. Thank you all so much for watching. Of course, I'd like to thank all my patrons who continue to support the channel month after month. Without you, these videos would not be possible. Please give this video a like, comment, and share. Please check out my Teespring store for great gaming swag, t-shirts, carry bags, coffee cups, and more. Join the channel's Facebook page, RPG Reviews. Consider supporting the channel by becoming a patron yourself. Or alternatively, you can just send a tip through the PayPal tip jar. A link is in the description. And as always, my friends, may your D20 roll true and game on.